babe, wanna leave this town. I'm saying, whatever, if you wanna go, I'm down. 'Cause I will make the bigger thing.
Hey there, fellow travelers.
And welcome to She's Got Baggage, where we dive into all the moments of travel, the good, the bad, the weird, the confusing, and every fascinating nuance along the way. I'm Abby.
And I'm Katy.
And together, we're your travel gal pals, here to share the full spectrum of our experiences from life beyond borders.
So grab a seat and get ready to join us as we explore the diverse tapestry of travel, from exhilarating highs to the challenging lows and everything in between.
This is your final boarding call. Thanks for joining us on today's adventure. Hello, travel friends.
And welcome back to She's Got Baggage, your go-to podcast for all things travel and expat life.
I'm Abby.
And I'm Katy.
We hope you're ready for another exciting episode as we continue to share our travel journey with you.
And speaking of journeys, let's take a quick trip down memory lane. In our last episode, we delved into why we left the USA to travel and live abroad.
That's right. We shared our reasons, our processes, the excitement that fueled our decision to embark on what has become a pretty incredible adventure. If you missed it last time, Katy and I have both been living our lives abroad and traveling, usually separately. Sometimes we've met up in other countries for the last 9 years or so. So now we're spending these first few episodes going over some of our early days as young, dumb travelers.
It has actually been a blast reminiscing about those early days. It's been such a long time since we were liquidating our lives to change our entire lives completely.
Yeah, it was a trip going back over it. I enjoyed our first chat, and I wanted to say thank you to our listeners for hopefully joining us one more time as we continue exploring everything from our life beyond borders.
So buckle up and get ready for another adventure with She's Got Baggage.
Today, we're going to rewind the clock a little bit and reminisce about our first few days and weeks in new countries. From exhilarating highs of arrival to the nerve-wracking early day moments of navigating the unknown, we are going to share as much as we can.
Whether you're a seasoned traveler, you're dreaming of taking that leap, you're an expat or a former expat, stick around for some candid stories, laughs, and maybe a few lessons that were learned along the way. Abby, during our first episode, we talked about how you had sold all of your stuff, had all of the to-do lists, and gave your boss a condolences, sorry for your loss card. I want to know what happened next. Your feet are on the ground in a new life. What was that like for you? I mean, were you overwhelmed, nervous, excited? How did you feel?
So, yeah, I quit my job with a condolences card, and I would recommend that to anyone for quitting a job ever. It was my favorite thing the favorite way I could have done that. And then Pants and I had a little going away party at a pub in Arizona, and I sort of thought we would invite a few local friends and they would come by and have a beer and it would be pretty chill. And then all of a sudden I was getting, not like RSVPs, but I was getting responses from family all over the United States, and people were booking flights and coming in to visit and say goodbye. And it was really crazy. And it was like super touching and pretty, I don't know, just pretty moving that people were willing to come so far just to have a goodbye beer.
Right.
It was kind of crazy. It was pretty cool. So we left on what felt like a really high note. We had said goodbye to a lot of really important people. We headed to the airport. Pants's parents actually gave us a ride. We got to the airport. We traveled for, 3 days to get from Arizona to Phuket, Thailand. And then when we finally arrived, we decided to spend the first, 2 or 3 weeks just kind of on vacation. But we had traveled with all of the stuff that we could physically carry in our suitcases. We get to Phuket. We both agree that we're going to spend, 2 or 3 weeks just kind of traveling and going snorkeling and going to the beach and just kind of going to the markets and hanging out. We did that for a while, but after we had spent about a week or so in Phuket, we moved on to a small island called Koh Phi Phi. I'm sure that you know, Koh Phi Phi is a place that is meant for backpackers. It is not a place for foreigners to bring all of their stuff and walk it all around the island and like live there.
It is not even a place that has very many roads.
No, it's a pedestrian island.
It's a pedestrian island, and it is for absolute all-night partying, and, you know, there's some pretty beaches too, but it is a backpacker location.
And it's only accessible by boat.
Yeah.
So we've got these big suitcases, and it's hot. You know, it's hot and it's humid, and there's mosquitoes, and both Pants and I are pissed off, and we're carrying all this stuff, and it's super heavy.
Wow.
So we get on this boat, we get to Koh Phi Phi. We're thinking, like, why do we have all of this stuff? The reason that this happened is because we thought that we would need jobs, and for those teaching jobs, we would need professional clothing. Coming from corporate America, we had, you know, pants and suits and ties and nice shoes and jackets and all of these nice things.
Pencil skirts.
Yeah, power suits and like all of these like important clothing. What we came to find out was in Thailand, especially, let me back up. In the United States, the color black is considered pretty professional.
Yes.
In Thailand, the color black is only used for mourning. So here we are with all of these super professional black pieces of clothing. And then we discovered that we needed florals and bright colors. So we were just going to have to throw everything away. So we basically were just, I think I mentioned this in our first episode, we were kind of like chucking bags of clothes at all of these Thai people who did not want our clothing. Like they didn't want this stuff.
No one wants your New York and Company polyester blend, like shift dress.
Or the jeans that I bought from Express in 2008. Like no one was interested in any of these clothes.
Happening.
So anyway, we're in Koh Phi Phi for a while. Eventually we move on to another small city back on the mainland of Thailand. It was called Krabi. I sort of started to panic because now we had been on vacation for like 2 or 3 weeks. The reality is setting in that we had just blown up our lives to live unemployed on vacation. I don't know. I had had a job since I was 13 years old. For the first time in my life, I was like, oh my God, I have no job. I don't know what to do. I kind of freaked out. There was one morning where Pants was really not concerned with getting jobs. I was feeling very nervous. I'm like, we can't just live on vacation forever. And Pants is like, why not?
That's so Pants.
It's so Pants. It's so Pants. So he said, okay, if it will make you feel better, take the morning, send out some applications, put some feelers out there, send out our resumes, and then we'll go hang out for the afternoon and we'll see how it goes. So that's what we did. I sent out some applications. We came back later in the afternoon, and I bet I sent out 20 applications. And when we came back, we had 25 responses and 25 job offers. It really was that easy to get some attention, right? To get interviews and to get some opportunities. We ended up taking our first teaching jobs in a small Thai city called Ratchaburi. And we thought this was going to be a good fit because at the time, Pants' older brother was traveling a lot for his job. He would frequently fly in and out of Bangkok. Ratchaburi was only like a 2 or 3 hour drive from Bangkok. So we're like, yeah, okay, this works. Eventually we learned that the older brother, his job was not going to send him to Bangkok anymore. So that actually...
So now you made a choice to be in this like tiny rural village in the middle of Thailand.
Correct. And now we weren't really going to see brother in Bangkok, but that's okay. He ended up visiting us later on and that was great. So now we're in Krabi. And if anybody knows the geography of Thailand, these two cities between Krabi and Bangkok, it's long and it's skinny. So we've got all this stuff and we have too much stuff to put it on a tiny Thai bus. Like we do not know how to get all of our crap from Krabi to Ratchaburi. I was like, can we rent a car? And Pants is like... okay. So we rented a car.
And the traffic there is so different than the United States. Don't they drive on the opposite side of the road too?
I don't remember.
Some of the countries in Southeast Asia do. Because they were colonized, you know? So, oh my God.
I'm sure Thailand is the opposite side, but I can't keep track of it anymore. So anyway, so we drive all the way up to Ratchaburi. And we find our little apartment and we meet our co-teachers and everyone's really nice. And then there was one day we were driving around the town trying to find our apartment, and Pants and I got into a huge fight. I don't even know what it was about. But I was like, I'm mad. And he was mad. And I was like, I'm getting out of the car. And he's like, where are you going? And I'm like, I don't know. And we just had this big dumb fight. So
anywhere but here.
Anywhere but here. Anywhere but here. So eventually we had to get this rental car from Ratchaburi back up to Bangkok. This on Google is like a 2-hour drive. So we think, yeah, we can do this.
Easy.
What a foolish idea to assume that we can drive in Bangkok.
You hadn't been to Bangkok at this
Having
point, right?
never been
so you
there
had no
before.
idea what a cluster this was going to be. Oh, man.
It was a terrible idea. So, of course, we did it. We drive up to Bangkok and we think it's going to be a 2 or 3 hour drive. It ended up being, I don't know, like 9 hours in the car.
Ugh.
We got stuck on an overpass because the entire city was locked down. We learned this later. They were like transporting the princess of Thailand through Bangkok. So all of the traffic was stopped on a Friday afternoon and we were stuck on this overpass. We couldn't go to the bathroom. We couldn't get water. There's no air conditioning in this crusty old car. Like we were just stuck on this overpass. Eventually, we get the car back to the airport. We take a bus from the airport to this bus station called Victory Monument. I know you remember Victory Monument. Chaos. And then we get into this little minibus that's going to take us from Bangkok back to Ratchaburi. We're in this van, and now it's getting late. It's like 11 o'clock at night when we leave Bangkok. It's like the final bus out of Bangkok. So by the time we get to Ratchaburi, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and you were driving through the country, and the van is going 200 miles an hour, and we're sitting in the back, and it's all dark, and then the van would just stop in the middle of nowhere, and the door would open, and someone would just get out on the side of the road. And the van door would close and it would drive off. And I'm like, we just left an old lady on the side of the road. And I didn't understand that this is how they do it.
This is just how it's done.
This is just how it's done. I didn't
man.
know that. So we're kind of freaking out. We're like, how do we know when to get out? Are we supposed to know when to get out of the van?
They're not announcing the stops either.
No, they just stop. Finally, I said to Adam, we're not getting out until the driver kicks us out because I don't know where to get out. Like, I don't know what to do. So we stay in the van, and finally it comes to the last stop, probably 2 o'clock in the morning. We get out of the van and we're standing on the side of the road. We don't know where to go, and I refused to move. We don't know if we should walk left, right, up, or down. So we're just standing there. And then this Thai kid, he comes over and he says, "May I help you?" In English.
Perfect.
And we're like, yes, you speak English. And so he said, yeah, I'll help you. We said, well, we don't know where to go. We think this is Ratchaburi. We think we live in this city, but like we don't know where to go.
Help me.
Help me. And so this Thai kid is like, okay, I will come back 10 minutes. And we're like, all right. So we're just standing there. And sure enough, he comes back on his motorbike 10, 15 minutes later, and he motions for us to get on the back of the bike. So now it's this small Thai guy driving a moped. I'm in the middle, and Pants is on the back.
And Pants is like 7 feet tall.
He's 7 feet tall, correct. And we've got backpacks. Yeah, and it's just awful. So this kid, he takes off driving around Ratchaburi, and he swears he's going to, help us find our apartment. And we are driving around this town for probably an hour in the middle of the night. Every once in a while, there's random house with 2 or 3 really old, like shirtless Thai men just drinking whiskey and smoking cigarettes, like on the sidewalk. And the driver would stop and speak with them in Thai. And every time I was sure, he's like, hey, are these the foreigners you guys want to rob?
Like you're like, sure you're getting set up here.
I was sure that we were getting set up. So eventually, and that never happened. Like Thai people are awesome and it was not dangerous. Nothing bad ever happened. And it was crazy. So
but in the dark, in the middle of the night, in a country you've never been to before, it's understandable that your mind goes to some dark places.
We were a little freaked. We were like, this guy is just going to deliver us. Like, here are your hostages. So we were kind of freaked out. So then eventually this kid drove us down a dirt road. He's asking directions from these random people that were still awake. Eventually he drives down a dirt road and he stops between a couple buildings and he kind of motioned to us to just get off the bike. He doesn't know how to help us any further, or he thinks that we're at the destination. He's just kind of like, okay, you go, like get off. So we get off the bike, and then Pants and I start to kind of bicker at each other again because we still don't know where we are. We're in between a couple buildings on a dirt road. It's dark. There's no English words on signs. Like, there's just nothing for us to use to find our new apartment. Now I'm like on the verge of tears. I'm like starting to cry. This is not working. I don't know where you've taken me. This was your idea to come to Ratchaburi so that we could see your brother. Like, I was so angry. And so I'm kind of on the verge of tears, and he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to like calm me down or fix the situation. So we're starting to fight with each other. And then a couple of the American English teachers that we had met a few days before just appeared on this dirt road. And they're like, yo, what are you doing? Like, are you guys okay? And I'm like, I don't know where we are. Like, I'm just freaking out. And they're like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, no. I said, we don't know where we live. And they were like, you don't know where your apartment building is? And I was like, no. And they said, you're standing in front of it. And I was like, what? And I turn around and they said, yeah, this is your building. And we were like, well, we didn't know that. It's dark. It was so stupid. And so this poor Thai kid, he had driven us around for like 2 hours in the middle of the night and finally delivered us home. And once we realized that, we start to celebrate. And yeah, we made it. And I reach into my purse and I get like a wad of Thai baht, Thai money.
Yeah, money.
And I try to shove it into his hand and he will not take it. Come to find out, I tried to give him like $9 for all of the help that he gave to us.
But that was a whole wad. Like, those bills are worth, very little.
Yeah. So I try to shove all this money out. He refuses to take it. He's like, these people are crazy morons.
He's
I'm
got
getting
a story out of this that's more valuable than
yeah. He's like, these two are absolute nightmares. I want to get out of here immediately. So then we go, so fine. Okay. So we say goodbye to this guy. He leaves. It was, in hindsight, a really funny story, but at the time it was kind of terrible. But in truth, it was such a wonderful welcome to Thailand and the undeniable generosity, goodwill, open-heartedness, helpfulness, hospitality of Thai people. I mean, it was absolutely crazy how much this kid had gone out of his way to help a couple farang. For our listeners, farang is foreigner in Thai.
Sure.
He was just super helpful. So it was kind of crazy those first couple days, but I'm sure that you have plenty of stories about your first couple days. What, in the Philippines, you said?
Well, the Philippines really kind of was one of my first stops, but still reeling from your story because I know how the emotional roller coaster goes when you are going away for the first time and you're doing it off guidebook. You're not following a tour guide. Your mind just goes in totally different directions, and it's no wonder you guys were fighting and you were crying. And you probably hadn't slept very well in a long time.
We were hot. And for a little clarification, this is 9 years ago. Travel was a little different back then, and we were so green. So the idea that we just pin our location on Google Maps was not something that had occurred to us or that we knew how to do or whatever.
We learned all of those things later. I think for me, it was a little bit different because by the time I turned my life upside down, I was not really new to traveling. Last time we spoke about, I did unexpectedly quit my life.
I quit my
life, but I had already booked 2 long weekend trips for that summer because there were some holidays coming up. And like I said last time, I used to maximize 3-day weekends here, there, and everywhere. So I had a trip to go see one of my besties get married in Honduras. I stopped by Guatemala on that leg. And then I came back to New York because all my tickets were round trip in and out of New York. So I drove to Colorado, dropped off my stuff. Then I flew back to New York.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because my tickets were out of New York. So I flew back to New York. I got my ticket to Guatemala and I was there for a few days. Then I went to Honduras, saw my friend get married, flew back to New York. I had like a period of 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks before my next 3-day weekend, which was to Panama City. So I was back in New York and I took some odd jobs to try and make a little bit of cash while I was in town, and I stayed on a friend's couch. And that's really when I had the time to be able to like have a goodbye party and all that. Those 2 trips to like Central America were pre-planned before turning my life around.
The move.
Like the full snow globe, shake it up and see what lands. Like I had already planned that, right? Now I was doing those trips, but like I had everything I was going to use forever in those backpacks. And it was just, I had so much stuff. Also, I was approaching those vacations in a very different way because it was holiday, right? So,
and one of them was a wedding.
Yeah,
like
one of them was a wedding, and they were short and sweet. So I just approached it like any other trip I had ever taken before, which was just balls to the wall, party all the time, like maximize every moment, doing activity after activity, going to my friend's wedding, which was awesome. You know, and now I've been a couple of weeks and a couple of trips, and I'm starting to really feel the weight of my backpacks. And like I have the funniest photos, like for the people that don't know me personally, I am like 5 foot tall. Like I am not, okay, like I'm built like a linebacker, but I am not at all a tall person. So I'm wearing this giant backpack that was probably 30 pounds, like 40, like maybe 50, I don't know. And I had a front pack and I had a purse, like
just buried.
Yeah, I was just carrying around all this stuff. And, you know, I'm like, this is kind of crazy. And I had, you know, during those few weeks in New York, I was like, scouring all these blogs with people who were influencing me to like buy all the things, you know? So I had so many like gadgets, like water purifier.
Oh gosh.
Like I had hammocks, I had sleep sacks, I had all these things that I never once used. And I also had a lot of cute clothes and shoes. And I realized, man, I need to cut this down and be a basic, you know, instead of like a fashionista, I started giving away stuff. So when I decided to go to the Philippines, it was really like, okay, I'm going to come back from Panama City. I opened up Kayak Explorer, which you can kind of put in New York City, right? And see where's the cheapest place in the world. It shows you like a map with like all these numbers, you know, and I'm like, okay, I can go to Manila for like $400. That is on the other side of the world, and that's perfect. At the time, I had this attitude of it didn't matter where I was going because everywhere was on the list. You know, so it's like, I don't care what city it is. It's like, that gets me as far away as I could. So I went Panama City to Florida to New York City to Taipei, where I had like a 10-hour layover where I went into the city, which was really fun, and then on to Manila. So that was a total of 50 hours.
Oof.
It was, but you know what? I didn't care because for the first time in my entire life, time was not a factor whatsoever. I was like, all right, so let's just go along with it. Like I can watch movies. There's enough layovers there that I can get out, stretch my legs and all that stuff. So I just went along with it and got myself to Manila. I was really excited to get to Manila, mostly because I didn't know anybody that had ever been to the Philippines before. And so it really felt like, cool, I get to like go somewhere I really have no concept. Like I get to really, in my own way, discover a new place. Again, in the beginning of being in the Philippines, I approached it the same way, where I was busy every single minute, every single day. It took me a while, and my big shift was mental. It was going from a holiday girly to slow travel. That means being able to slow down and just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna like sit here on like a chair in the sand and not worry about the time and not feel guilty for
wasting a day.
Yeah. Exactly. In the beginning, I was 32 years old, acting like I'm like 22 years old. I was absolutely a crazy girl. I was teaching myself how to drive a motorbike without ever taking a lesson, driving right into a bush. I had all these romances. I taught myself how to breathe fire. I was just completely living my life. I had escaped, like I escaped what? I don't know. Since this was not my first time traveling internationally or going solo, I'd already gotten a lot of my rookie mistakes out of the way. Like the first time I went to Istanbul, which I told you about, I had that 50-pound giant rolling suitcase. For anybody who knows Istanbul, it's pretty famous for cobblestones and hills. I also had packed a lot of cute shoes and dresses. And a lot of them showed, my chest, and they were short little sundresses, and that was not appropriate for some places.
There are some places in Istanbul where, like Istanbul, it's not a place where anyone is going to shame you or hurt you.
They're not going to shame
you,
but you might get some looks.
Yes. But for me in Istanbul especially, a bigger issue than exposing your shoulders is trying to walk around with a roller suitcase that weighs 60 pounds. That's a problem.
It was so crazy. And I remember trying to take the suitcase down a ramp and it just got away from me. And it almost took me down. It was crazy. And I was just so stupid at that time. And I was only gone for 6 days. Why was I packing like it was going to be the rest of my life? But, I was really an idiot by that time. And then when I started solo traveling, I just really isolated myself at first. I was so afraid to speak to new people and go to dinner by myself. And I'm that's not who I am. But I think just in my normal life, going to dinner by myself in New York City, I'd never done something like that before. It was just different. So it was a very different time for me by the time I got to the Philippines, because, I had all of this stuff on me. And that's when I started realizing the weight of my decisions physically in the bags, but also what have I done? What have I done? Have I completely made a huge mistake? All of that became kind of an issue, but I made a real shift. It happened kind of gradually. I put my phone on silent, and I went from having 2 phones, being on call for 24 hours, and just checking my email on vacations and all this stuff, to putting my phone on silent and not setting alarms. This was just such a, I don't know, it felt like the biggest event.
I feel like for me, that was almost part of what contributed to the panic, though, was for the first time in my life, I had no responsibilities.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I blew up my life.
Exactly.
This is not sustainable. I panicked.
I think because a lot of, up until that point, the direction of my life was primarily focused on work without having something like work to focus on. What am I doing in life?
Right.
So it's just an absolute spiral of, okay, I don't have anywhere I need to be. Nobody's waiting for me. No one's needing me right now. In some ways that was really cool, but it was definitely a weird transition. So just like you said, I think the biggest surprise for me right away was that I went from feeling really isolated and a little bit alone. But as soon as I opened my eyes, I realized that I was surrounded by incredible people, just like Thailand. Filipino people are just the absolute nicest people ever, and so generous. And also so many people that I met in those first days. One of my besties, my whole crew from Spain, I still am friends with to this day, was from the first week in the Philippines. These people really taught me a lot. They helped me realize that I'm sick. Go get antibiotics from the pharmacy. No need to freak out and just stay sick. You don't need a prescription. If you need something, ask. I left my iPad on a bus. They were like, go to this police officer, and it was there.
They're gonna get it back.
You're gonna get it back. And I was always lost, taking the wrong buses, in the wrong places. And it took me a while to learn that you could have SIM cards, which really opened up a whole new level for me. So there were a lot of really steep learning curves, but it was also mostly a mental learning curve for me at that time. That was my first days in the long-term travel.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
It's weird for me to hear you say that you were antisocial.
Well,
I feel like that's a lie, but okay. But what you mean though. Like we've changed
Yeah.
changed a lot, and we've come a long way in different ways. It does kind of change your personality when you're just inserted into such a different environment all of a sudden.
Sure.
It's kind of weird to talk about this knowing what we know now about how to travel. It's kind of like talking about completely different people.
We've traveled together now several times since we've been traveling so much in these years. It's almost become second nature to us. All of the rituals of preparing for travel, for planning travel, doing travel, getting to the airport, all of this stuff you don't even think about anymore. Neither of us have those giant suitcases, and we certainly do not subscribe to carrying around 100 pounds of nonsense anymore. In fact, most of the time, we like those budget air travel where you get one personal item for 8 kilos or less. So I think a lot of this has become so much easier because of experience. It is really fun to look back and remember we weren't always this way. And it really shows in the ways that we've grown that maybe I don't think I always think about because it has become so natural.
Yeah, I agree with that. I will never, ever go back to a trip that is less than a month and take anything more than a backpack.
Oh,
like,
I
will
agree.
never.
I agree. Like, what is the point in packing? It doesn't matter if you're going for a month or 2 months, 3 months. You don't need to pack more than a week's worth of stuff because guess what? You can wash clothes, like
sink laundry.
It's just.
So I remember on our first episode, you had used the phrase, you used the line, "I'm going to travel until the money runs out." So you're in the Philippines, you're perhaps partying all the time, you're spending a little money, you're doing all the adventures, you're going on all the excursions, and eventually, did the money run out? How did you end up?
Well, I mean, I was not doing a very good job of saving in those first few months because I was choosing to do every single thing like it was a bucket list. But I found out that I could volunteer and do certain things to make that money stretch. I amazed myself how little I was really able to get by on. And a lot of that had to do with geography and where I was mostly spending my time. There was a point where I probably was looking at just maybe 3 more months of being able to afford the lifestyle when I decided time to either plan my exit strategy or maybe try teaching English. So that's what I did. I got my TEFL and, that's that's a story for another time, but that really is what took me from, okay, I'm doing this temporarily into, you know what? Why not stay longer? Right?
Yeah. I feel like for me, when I talk to people who are maybe still at home or even when we travel and meet new people, the first question, sometimes the only question that they ever want to ask is, how do you pay for it? How do you pay for it? And I get it.
I get it too. And that was my first impression. Like I said last time, when I first went on my first solo travel and I met all these Europeans that were traveling for months and months on end, like my first thought was like, are they just rich? How do they do this? So I understand the immediate curiosity about it. This person I haven't talked to in 20 years is coming out of nowhere being like, so how do you afford to do this? Like, it feels like kind of a weird question to be asking for the first thing you said to me since high school, but it is a genuine question. A spoiler alert is that neither of us won the lottery.
No.
Neither of us are rich. Like, we're just making choices and sacrifices, and we're taking risks and hedging our bets on certain locations and just trying different things.
Well, I feel like the whole how do you make your money, how do you pay for your life, how do you afford to travel is definitely, like I said a second ago, the first question that I get asked all the time. So I feel like maybe that's a good topic for us to talk about next time.
I think that talking about teaching English and the doors that it's opened up for us, but also how it's taught us so much more about the world. It's a two-way learning street. So please come back next week to hear about how teaching English has opened up the world for us for a long-term process.
I think we would both like to thank again any of our listeners who hung on for this long for coming along on another leg of our little journey. We hope that you had fun listening to some of our memories and mishaps.
Thank you very much. And as always, please subscribe so you don't miss another episode.
See you next time.
Thoughts and taters.
Thoughts and taters. Bye. Thanks for joining us on She's Got Baggage, the podcast where we depart into the travel world that has embraced us for the past 9 years. We invite you to continue exploring with us, from tales that stir your thoughts to moments that tickle your funny bone and tug at your heartstrings. Our itinerary promises to inspire and captivate.
Don't forget to secure your buddy pass by subscribing, ensuring you never miss our next adventure. Your feedback and reviews are always appreciated as we continue to navigate these unexplored territories together. Your reviews are so important so that we can stay on course with content that keeps you coming back for a return trip. Until next time,
I'm Abby.
And I'm Katy. For additional perks, check us out on she'sgotbaggagepodcast.com. And you can also find us on social media.
And remember that this has been She's Got Baggage, where every adventure has a story.